Hi. I was going to write this to you, but it was going to be too long, so I'm going to make a video, and this is going to be a little lengthy, but I hope that it will come as an encouragement to you and to let you know that God knows exactly what's going on, and He loves you and He cares for you. So I want to introduce myself. I am Susanna Fong, and I am going to spend a few moments here to answer three of the top questions that I often get. The first question is, what happened to your eye? And I love it. I mean, I get those questions from little kids, and it's fine. It's not offensive at all, and I think it's great that they ask, "What's wrong with your eye?" And it gives me a chance to share a little bit. But I about 2.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. It was adenoid cystic carcinoma of the lacrimal gland. And the lacrimal gland is the gland that produces tears. And so, because that tear gland has been removed, I no longer have tears, and my eye is also has been radiated, and I went through chemo. So there's no tears whatsoever in this eye. And because of that, I wear a special lens that holds some saline, but that's not good enough. So I just actually just put a bit of plastic wrap over my eye, and that is working. It keeps my eye very comfortable all day long. And so it's unfortunate that I have to walk around with this, but I'm here. I'm thriving, and it's working. The second question I get is, well, how did you find out about your cancer? And this is odd story. I was hosting my daughter-in-law's bridal shower at my home, and I asked a friend of mine to take some photos of the day. And so after she took the photos, she did post them on Facebook. And it's really interesting how when you look yourself in the mirror, you may not see any different. I'm washing my face or putting lotion on my face. I don't see any different. But when I saw my pictures of me on Facebook, I noticed, I'm like, why is my eye droopy, and why is it swollen? And it was just one eye, and I thought, it was, because I was going through menopause, or I was aging, and all that. So I was able to see it, and then I touched it, and I realized there was a bump, and it just so happens, and that just so happens, my mom had a eye appointment, and I was taking her there, and her eye doctor is the same eye doctor as mine, and our eye doctor is also a childhood friend of mine. And so when I brought my mom in to get her eye checked, I said to him, I'm like, hey, John, can you take a look at this? And he took a look, and he said, I don't know what this is, but I want you to see my colleague, the other doctor that's in his office as well. So I went home, and I made the appointment. I went to see the other doctor. He looked at it, and he's like, you need to get an MRI. And I went to get an MRI, and went back to his office, and he said, I don't know what this is. I need you to get a CAT scan. And so I went ahead and got the CAT scan, and again, he said, I don't know what this is. The next step is a biopsy. And, at that point, I was thinking, wow, does he, know what he's doing, kind of thing. I was really doubting his skills, but it turned out to be, it was great that he was able to be humble and say, you know what, I don't know what this is, but let's research it. Let's discover, let's go deeper in our discovery. And so the next step was a biopsy, which we did, and he called me, and he told me that he felt like that it was benign, that there was nothing to worry about. And so, that was the first time it ever even occurred to me to think that it might have been cancer. And then a couple of days later, he called me back, and he's like, I think I told you a little prematurely what the diagnosis was. And he's like, would you mind if I have another pathologist take a look at it down in the city at UIC? And I said, of course, go right ahead. And in the meantime, as I was going through all that, I was texting one of my very good friends, her husband. Her husband is an ocular surgeon, and I'm texting him, and I'm telling him I'm getting the MRI, I'm getting the CAT scan, I'm getting the biopsy, and he's confirming and he's affirming, and he's like, yes, this is the proper thing to do, etc., etc. And then he's like, you know what? I think you're the case that we're talking about. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's a doctor from the suburbs that's bringing a case to us, and he's like, I believe you're the one. And so unofficially, my doctor was bringing my case, he had my approval. He brought it down to UIC, into the city, and he was talking to these other doctors about my case. And the reason is because this cancer is so rare. Guys, this is so rare that he had never seen it before. And that's why he went from an MRI to a CAT scan to a biopsy. And now he was talking to his colleagues about this case. And so to make the story short, that went ahead, and he told me, I when I went and got my stitches out after the biopsy, he's like, I want you to go down to see a doctor down in the city, and he will give you the diagnosis. And so we went down. It was a Friday. We went down and went to see the doctor there, and he said, yes, indeed, this is cancer. Not only is it cancer, but it's extremely aggressive, and you need to take care of it right away. And he said, I can do the surgery. I have no problem doing the surgery. The only thing is that we don't have a protocol for this cancer. I don't know what happens after surgery. I don't know, what kind of radiation you need, or what kind of chemotherapy you need. And he said, but I do know someone down at Houston and MD Anderson that does specialize in this. And he's like, can you do this? Can you go down to Houston? And we said yes. And so anyway, so we met the doctor down in Houston, and she took care of the surgery, and I stayed down in Houston to get my radiation and my chemotherapy, which was about 7 weeks long. And so that is how that's where I am now, physically. Now, the last question that I always get is, well, how is it that you have so much grace and peace and joy through this? People that follow me on Instagram or Facebook hear parts of my story, and they see how I'm living my life. And even people from MD Anderson have said, we've met, we know a lot of people that have cancer, and many of them are very, very fearful. I get that. Many of them are very angry, and I get that too. But then they look at me and they're like, why is it that you have so much joy? And I say, you know what? It's because the Lord has prepared me for this, and I'll tell you how. So through the weeks where I was getting the MRIs and CAT scans, and didn't have the diagnosis yet, I was awoken in the middle of the night, and it was probably like about 4:45 in the morning, and a voice as loud as someone right next to me spoke to me, and the word was walk. As loud as you know, a person right next to me talking. I even looked next to my husband. I said, and he was stirring because he was getting up for work. And I said, "Did you just say something to me?" And he's like, "No, I didn't say anything to you." And so I laid back down because I knew at that moment it was from the Lord. And so I went back to sleep. And through the course of about 3 weeks, I kept, every so often when I would think of it, I would sit there and I would say, "Lord, what did you mean? What do you mean by walk? Where am I walking to? Who am I walking with? Am I walking from someone, walking to someone, walking from a place to a place? What are you trying to say to me?" And I would ask and I wouldn't get an answer until this one morning I woke up early and I was laying in bed and the thought came to me again and I asked the Lord, "Lord, what do you mean when you told me to walk?" And then he gave me a picture. He gave me a picture. Before me was the ocean, and there was water everywhere, and I was to the left of me was a fishing boat, and then to the right of me was Jesus, and he was holding out his hand. And at that moment I said, "Really?" I was like, "Really? Really, Lord? You want me to walk on water?" And then my gaze went down to my feet. And I looked at my feet and I could see the miles and miles of water underneath my feet. And I was scared. I was scared because I'm not a strong swimmer, and it just terrified me. And then Jesus took my face and he lifted it up. And he's like, "I want you to look. I want you to look at me. Look at me. Do not look down. I want you to look at me." And so that morning, that day, was the day that we had to go down to UIC to get my diagnosis from this other surgeon. And so I remember when that doctor told me, "You have cancer. Not only do you have cancer, but it's extremely aggressive, and you must take care of it right away." The floor dropped. The floor dropped. And I remember what the Lord said. He said, "Look at me." And out of obedience, I lifted my head. I lifted my face, and I looked up. As I was walking out of that room, I looked up, knowing that my heart and my mind would have to follow that gaze. And so I wanted to share that with you to encourage you that God knows. He loves you so much. He knows what you're going through. And I will continue to pray for you. Okay? Take care.